Hello and welcome to another episode of What Does It Mean to Be Human, a podcast on life, meaning, and everything. And I'm Ron Saylor, the creative warrior, in my car today, joined by Ben Gare in his castle. So, um, so let's kick off the show. Ben, how are you, mate? What's been happening since the last week? What's something you want to share about what's been happening for you over what you shared in our last episode?
Yeah, last episode we were talking about sort of having traveled and vulnerability and sort of relationships with family and others, you know. So yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a week of integrating what was, you know. It was definitely like I'm pretty quiet at best, so having a lot of stimulation, being around a lot of people all the time means I don't have the normal sort of integration time that it takes me personally to kind of sit with everything that was. So it was kind of all of quite a lot that in a short period of time for my processing. So it's definitely been a week of just rest and being quiet and really just checking in constantly where I'm at. What do I need? What does that look like today? You know, because you can have all the ideas that you're going to do X, Y, Z, but in truly dropping into what it is you need, you know, there's often a lot of talk of self-care and stuff these days, and it looks like going to the spa and having a massage or something like that. But sometimes it's just being able to sit with self, right? That can be some of the highest level of self-care that you can have. You know, it doesn't have to be an activity. It's just acknowledging where you're at and how to how to be with everything that's been before that led you to here and everything that is now. You know, so it's definitely at least for my process, just keeping it simple, stripping it down to bare basics so that I've got a structure. And I think we've talked about this before as well, where it's by creating sort of the boundaries of discipline and kind of that kind of structure of eating well, exercising, and kind of um, even if it's not consciously processing, it's unconsciously in the background giving it space to just exist, you know. So
Mm.
I've just been sort of, yeah, really checking in as like if someone wants to hang out, it's like, do I really, is that what I need today? Or is that what, like, sometimes we all have to push through. And again, I think we talked about this a little bit last time about there's times to park your stuff on the side and if you're just busy. Um, but because I've been less busy this week, and it's kind of like knowing that again, I've got to go look after my dad tomorrow because he's out of hospital today. So starting to kind of go, right, well, I've got X amount of free time for myself. How am I going to use that in a way that makes me functional for the rest of the time in reality? You know, because our stuff never ends at the end of the day. You know, it's just our relationship to our stuff does. So we start to put into place these strategies of how we're dealing with whatever is in whatever time frames we've got and whatever kind of space and energy we have, you know, and being sort of open to just listening to self and being able to just integrate in that sort of way.
Mm.
And you, where's your week been at? Or
Yeah,
any
no,
week?
I was just taking a moment just to really digest what you just shared. Huge, you know, it's true everything you say, and what came up for me there was the level of respect that you got for yourself, right? To honor yourself in this process and take the time out and know the difference between needing that healing time, with needing me time, needing just recovery time, to the difference from wanting to hide, right, and not showing up. And you know what I'm hearing is, you know, you're showing up at the same time, if you because you can measure your time based on what's happening with your family and stuff, that you can go, okay, you know what? Normally, I'd probably look for hanging out with people or whatever, or
Yeah.
something to do. But right now, I just need me to really integrate the process, and especially after what you shared in last week's episode. So that's what really was resonating for me is the level of respect that you've got for yourself, and all of us really, when we get to really connect with ourselves on that deeper level, beyond the surface level of the mind and the surface level of what how it needs to look, or the things we should be doing, stepping outside of that, and stepping into, almost the unknown of our, our own selves, and in that unknown, we are genius. We're really, that's where true power lies, is when we step into our hearts and just away from the thought process of, like, the reason, logic of our ego, and the things that we got to do. Um, so yeah, that's why I was kind of like silent. I was just really just absorbing that, because that was quite a powerful statement, and that was quite a powerful share that you just did there, mate. So that was great. So thanks for sharing that. Um, yeah, look, my week's been good, man. Mate, I'm still on top of things. I'm just doing what needs to be done. And, as creators, often I ask, when I'm working with my clients, I ask them, what does it take to be a creator? And a creator is someone who creates the life they want to live, what they want, what they love, and we acknowledge all the stuff that comes with it, whether it's our story, belief patterns, dysfunctions, or whatever may be going on for us. We don't dismiss any of that, right? That's because that's who we are. It's just part of us. We take that with us on the journey, but it doesn't define us. It's a passenger in the journey, right? So my creator leads the way. So part of that for me is taking steps, action, doing my practice, that keeps me connected and grounded, my meditation, my breathing, my exercise, making sure nutrition's, most of the time on top, this 80-20 rule that we've talked about before in the past. Because if there's one thing I've learned about myself in this last week, Ben, it's that, what, I'm a slow burn kind of guy. But most of my life has been on the extremities, pushed to one end and trying to maintain that, and then everything just buckles and I fall back and I oscillate, boop, 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 like a rolling door, right? I just keep going back and forth. So I've realized, for me to keep on track, it's the little steps that I take that make the big difference. And those little steps kind of like, they compound into bigger steps, and then those big steps compound into like so much action and momentum. So that's kind of been my learning for the week. This morning I was running a bit behind schedule, hence why I'm sitting in my car today. I was going to do it in the park because it's such a beautiful day, but they're cutting the grass out there, so it's going to be a bit too noisy. And this is the other thing about when you're creating the life you want, right? Like, part of me is like, oh no, I'm doing it in my car. It's a podcast. And it was like, well, so what? Is it gonna lessen the content or the quality of what we have to say? Well, no, it's not, right? It's only like a perception thing. So, here we are, mate. So, like I said, I'm in my car, you're in your castle, and we're here to put on a great show of like what we've got to share about our truth about what it means to be human.
Yeah, and I just kind of wanted to just quickly go back. It's sort of just was present to me that it's easy for me, being a single guy with no kids and living on his own, to take my space. So I just want to also acknowledge those that who also works for himself and picks his own hours and works when he wants to work. So I want to just acknowledge that it can be difficult when you've got lots of pressures, and finding time for self is maybe not the easiest thing in the world, because there is jobs and kids and lives and stuff going on. So I just want to acknowledge that, even if it's carving out 5 minutes to drop in and acknowledge where you're at and what you need, and sort of start moving in the right direction. Not that you have to have all the answers right now, or not that you have to have sort of achieved the thing you want to get to. It's, again, like you just said, having those small steps with the bigger intention of where you're wanting to get to, and just honoring the place that you're at, because we've all got different stories, we've all got different experiences. But again, rather than let life be on autopilot, having at least the awareness to put greater intentions in place and giving yourself space to carve out just a little time to sit with self in a day. Stop people pleasing for others and saying yes to everything because it's the dumb thing to do, or putting yourself out to put others first. It's just a big part of that self-learning and that self-respect that the more you know yourself, the more you know your patterns, the more you understand how you operate, you can start to inform life that this is how you need to navigate for you to be healthy and to be happy and to start to create your own dreams and start to have those things put in place so that even if you don't have it this minute right here, right in front of you, you're at least building momentum to a place that you want to be, and we all have to put one foot in front of the other and take the steps. But I just want to acknowledge too that it does take time. And again, you and I have both talked about, we've been doing this for a long time. So I set my life up to be this way because personal process and stuff like that are important to me. And I do want to have kids, and I do still want to have certain experiences where I know that I'm going to be busier than I am at this time. But it was always like, I need to have me first. So that was why I chose to do it this way. And who knows what will be the future. But again, it's just, for me, it's holding the intent that this is who I am, this is who I want to be, because from having my own center, I can then give from that place of my own fullness, because there's no point being burnt out and trying to support others, because that ain't going to work, so it's about sort of, using what you've got and where you're at and starting to just put those foundational building blocks in place to create whatever it is your reality.
Yeah, mate, well said. I mean, that's a good point you brought up about, some of us are more fortunate with our time than others, and it's true. Some people, your families, kids, pets, jobs, self-employed, whatever it may be, we all have got this stuff, right? And I think for me, it's important to see how, regardless whether you've got, see, like as an example, I've worked with people they've got like 4 kids, they've got a family, they're running their own business, compared to someone who's, in a relationship, no kids, no pets. Yet the person who's in this relationship with family, pets, job, they can still find that time to do what we're talking about, compared to the person who doesn't have all those responsibilities. Sometimes we are so distracted by ourselves and distracted by everything going on around us that we lose so much time thinking, I've got to wait till this time, we've got to wait for the right moment, that we miss the moment that's already been presented. And a lot of it is what, we share in this podcast, is about creating the right structure to support you in that. And that's fundamental in navigating when you're going through ups and downs or whatever may be going in your life. Having that right structure gives you that space to step into, right? And even if it's just that fleeting moment when you go, fuck me, Dad, I'm gonna explode. I don't know what's gonna happen. But in that moment, you just actually acknowledge it, and you take a moment to pause, just to come back to your breath. And it can take 30 seconds, right? It doesn't have to be a full blown out process where you need to spend 10, 20 minutes processing or integrating. Oftentimes it's in that moment that you acknowledge it that creates the power. And I think a lot of what happens is we almost expect that we need to have the right place, we need to have the right mindset, the right time, the right space. And in all that thinking of trying to get it all right, we actually miss what we have to do. So a lot of it is really, for me, comes down to structure. And I'm not negating anyone's life or their situation, because you're right. We all have different situations, right? And I'm much similar to yourself. We don't have kids. We've got two beautiful cats that we love, but we've always been about personal development and being empowered individuals. And kids just didn't happen for us. It's just the way it is. It doesn't matter. It's just the way it is. And even though we don't have kids, sometimes I think, bloody hell, I don't have enough time in a day.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I have clients tell me, mate, try having kids and then come to me and tell me that you don't have enough time in a day. So it's all relative based on our own perception, and our perception is really created by our own definition of what perception is. And most of the time, that's based in our own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that we've created through all of our experiences that we've cataloged in the background, right? So really definition creates your perception. So when we start to look at how do we change our definition of things, then we can start to change our perception. And then that through that change, which starts with us, we start to have more space to drop into those moments that you're not what you're sharing about.
yeah. And kind of what's kind of coming up there for me a little bit in the background is like being aware that I think one of the most fundamental parts of reality is polarity. And polarity is always going to exist. I don't think there's this happy ideal of like anger doesn't exist, or we don't get upset, or we don't get triggered by stuff, or that it's always a positive. Like spiritual attainment is this constant positivity, um, because to me that doesn't really exist. No matter
Mm,
what, there is just polarity, is the positive and negative of magnetic and attracting repelling forces. And this is fundamental to your emotional process. What's up comes down. Like that's just how it is. And I think what true spiritual attainment or practice or development or centeredness, whatever you want to call that, is finding finding the equilibrium in the middle of all of your process, cultivating that witness that sees both the highs and the lows. And while you may deviate sort of in the way on the path, you're trying to maintain more of a center, so that not that you can't revel in the highs, but you don't wallow in the lows as much as well. So once we start to cultivate that sort of equilibrium, we're able to start having, you're not swayed by reality. You're not, diverted due to, this big thing happened, so you can actually more quickly come back to the center. And these are why, like, we're talking about all the disciplines and the things put in place to make that be an easier transition. So you're just not kind of left in highs or left in lows, not knowing what's next, because there is always going to be the opposite to follow, so that there is it's an inescapable process. But once we become the witness to it, we can less be controlled or manipulated by these sorts of things. And that requires, again, the depth of self and knowing of self, that you just become the witness.
yeah, what's coming for me then is what you're sharing is, and we kind of live in a world that we're bombarded by stimulus and information. It's everywhere you go. You've got like all these radios frequencies. You've got like different kinds of pollution. You've got different kind of environmental stresses. And we're vibrating beings at the end of the day with like high energy frequencies, and subtle frequencies can affect us, right? We have our phones too much, or if you're next to the radio or whatever, it could be like the noise pollution or street pollution, or it could even be the way someone looks at you and they thinks about you, right? Whatever the information is, we're kind of like just sensory kind of like beings that are always kind of attracting information. Like you were talking about this magnetized stuff, that some of the stuff we unconsciously attract based on our own belief patterns and how we feel we need to be in this world. Other times it just comes. And what I find for me to balance all that, because sometimes it's not me. Sometimes it's just the external forces that are impacting on me, and I'm unable to tell the difference. And I go, oh, it's all about me and me and me and me. One thing someone told me a long time ago, they said to me, you know what, Ron? Mother Nature doesn't give a shit. She doesn't care about you or like where you're at. You know, her job is to regulate this planet and to bring life and just to constantly regenerate. And you know, as humans, we just constantly regenerate as well. The power for me is drawing on Mother Nature to regenerate consciously. And you know, this is a tool I use. This is one thing I do. I'm sure people may do something else, or Ben, you might have some other things that you do. But what I find is when I'm feeling like heavy, maybe clouded in my thoughts, maybe you know, not following through my visions, not taking the steps, you know, I start making excuses, or you know, I'm starting to look to, you know, who can I blame? You know, well, I'm starting to depower myself, right? Well, I'm starting to give my power away because, you know, I'm refusing to take responsibility. And that's something else we've talked about on this podcast as well, you know, taking profound responsibility for everything that we do and who we are on this planet. One thing I like to do is I love to get in nature. I find as soon as I get in nature, you know, and, you know, for some of you who say, oh, yeah, I don't live around anywhere as nature, you may have like a patch of grass in your garden. That's as nature as you're going to get, right? Because nature is wherever you are. You might have a park across the road. I mean, you don't have to go to the beach. I mean, you might not have a bush. I mean, I don't have a rainforest next to me, but we have a lot of paths and walking areas, and you know, as long as I'm out there with the trees, or I love going in for a swim. It just cleanses my body, it just allows me to reset. So finding simple things like that to bring you back to who you are, especially if you love nature and the outdoors, right? Um, Standing in the sun, lying in the sun, anything that involves nature for me is really a powerful way to reconnect and just clear some of that fuzzy stuff that sort of we get bombarded with sometimes. Because sometimes we're unable to navigate ourselves because we're so distracted by other shit that's coming at us. So learning how to understand what's coming at us and what's ours is, I found for myself, is a really powerful way to able to move through things at a much quicker pace. Because for a long time, I'd say, oh, I'm doing all this, but it was just me. I couldn't seem to push through. And sometimes it's just the energetics. It could be a full moon cycle. It could be, I don't know. It could be something in the cosmos. But I guess what I've learned is not always me. You know, it's not always me and my shit. Sometimes there are bigger things going on apart from me, because I can't be that important in a world, in a planet, in a galaxy, in cosmos, when there's like trillions, maybe more, squillions of energy beings and life form here, right? So that's one thing I like to do, right? So what did you get out of that one, mate?
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, it's like I don't, not that big on astrology. I kind of have a belief in it a bit, but it's not something I follow or anything like that. But sometimes when I see in hindsight, I read a post online or whatever, and it said, "Oh, we've just been through this energy." It goes, "Oh, it makes sense. It's not just me." You know, it's just like that's actually a collective something that's going on that is bigger than I can even comprehend. So it just kind of solidifies that to me in my world, that it's like, yeah, it's not all about me, or it's what it is. And then the other one was, yeah. I mean, I haven't lived solidly in a city now for pretty much 10 years because I just can't do it. Um, it's like I kind of have the romantic idea of like, oh, there's people and stuff and things to do and art and culture. You go in the city and you get there and it's like, that's too much, you know, because it's just too much simulation for me. So it's just, yeah, I personally need to stay out of cities for myself, because that's just something I learned that it regulates my nervous system a bit better, and being close to nature and things like that just help me um, calm down and sort of be centered. And even yesterday, it was like spending a bit of a day in the garden, looking after all my plants, and kind of just, again, helps me come back into being of service as well, to just create a beautiful space, a beautiful environment for me to just exist, you know, and connect with the land. And you know, I planted stuff in the land that was just to beautify it for, even if I don't live here, you know, forever. I there's always been that philosophy of like leave a place better than you arrived, and to me that's important to, you know, help support again, even the next person that lives here, is to create that environment where I'm always of service, trying to help cultivate this calmness and this stillness of this internal place, you know, and plants obviously are a bit of my thing. So I've got quite a fair few cactus and stuff around here, that are just my protectors and my love and things like that. But yeah, being in nature and for me personally, yeah, being with my plants and yeah, going for a walk on the beach, putting your feet grounding. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious to most people that are listening here, but you know, it's getting your feet in the earth or in the sand or whatever it is, you know, is been proven scientifically to be a huge benefit to the grounding of your electrical system, because ultimately we are electric beings. And yeah, the rubber insulation between your sole of your shoe to the ground blocks that potential transfer of energy. So just being able to get barefoot on the earth or the sand or the grass or the sand or whatever it is in the water, it is big for those kinds of things. So there's often these just little things again that may not seem like a big deal in its own little act, but do 5, 10, 20, 30 of those things a day in the background are making a big difference to you just being present and here and grounding and, you know, having time to meditate and slow all of the chaos around me. Because as I say, like when I go into the city, I notice just my adrenal system ramp up, not because I'm intending to, it's because I'm feeling everybody around me. You know, it's like, whoa, okay, everyone's walking really fast through the city, or everyone's kind of like in their own busyness to keep distracted in many ways. And I get it. And it's, yeah, life can be hard and all that kind of stuff. So they're constantly moving to not feel the stillness. But this is exactly what we're talking about, is cultivating that internal stillness, that no matter what is happening around you, you can still come back to that place quickly. So that's again sort of been my experience of the last week of going, right, well, I was in business, now I'm kind of coming into stillness because I will be in business again, and just needing to carve out that little space for myself. But yeah, recognizing that no matter how on top of my story on how good I am at looking after myself, sometimes being around these high energy, high vibration things are going to affect you whether you like it or not, you know. So um, again, it's figuring out what you need for yourself to start to drop into you, and again, sort of short visits to the city is about my limit. And while I can enjoy it's definitely, I need to come back to center soon after. So
Yeah. You know what I got? I was thinking like I don't do much city work myself. I mean, I live in Sydney, right? So, but I don't work in the city. But one thing I do notice when I used to go in there to work is, you're right, everyone's like really high paced, high intensity, high energy. And for those of us that do work in the city, work in an office, and that's just the way. And for some of you, you might love your job, right? And that's what it comes down to. But I go back to what I shared earlier, where it's like, in that moment of acknowledging, like just that simple acknowledgement, like, what I'll do is I'll actually stop, because I'll see how I get caught up in the energy where like everyone's walking fast. I got to walk fast.
yeah.
So it's like, you know what? Okay, Ron, you know what? Stop. And I actually just stop,
Mm.
physically stop. And in that moment, I stop and I just look around, right? And I just see what's happening around me. And I see how this, again, I'm talking about that external stimulus, this information that's around me, and how it's impacting me, right? Unconsciously. But in that moment where I just say stop, I put myself back in the forefront. I put myself back in power. And then I just take a normal breath. I just regulate my breath and I go, okay, cool. Now I'm ready to take my step. And then I actually slow my pace down and I just do my thing. And that's what I'm saying. It's like little moments like that make such a massive difference, right? And this is what I'm learning, mate. I'm learning, like, it's so easy just to get caught up in everything because, like I said, we're just constantly bombarded by stimulus. So when we start to understand how to recognize information for what it is, right? It's just information. It's our choice whether we choose to take that information on board or not. Now, most of us will do it unconsciously because we're not aware. Some of us will be aware and go, well, I don't know if this is the right thing for me, right? Let me reset, check, recalibrate, and move forward. And that's, like with everything we talk about, takes practice, right? It's like you say, if you want to learn how to ski, you don't go to the snow one weekend and call yourself a skier. You got to go multiple times, right? You got to learn the skills to how to, like, whether you're snowboarding or skiing, like you need to learn the skills, how to strap yourself into those things, how to position your body, how to maneuver down the hill, how to get yourself back up, if you're going to wobble, how you're going to maintain your balance. These things happen over time. And it's also when we talk about flexing our creative power, that takes time because the more we use it, the stronger it becomes. So, this is where I'd like to talk about, like our will and the imagination that we have to create and move through, right? Like it's the follow through that we have. So it just takes a lot of time, man. It's everything. And we're here for a while, you know, we're here on earth for a while. It's not like we don't have enough time to learn this stuff.
Hmm.
And, some of us, I'm in my late 40s and I'm only really starting to learn all this sort of stuff on a really deep level beyond the surface level of the mind, and the intellectual side of things, like really starting to embody, the stuff that I talk about. Because I think as a therapist for myself, as a professional, as a healer, it's important for me to have this experience so I can connect to other people. And I'm kind of fortunate that because of the upbringing I had, it's kind of given me a lot of life experience to connect on this level. And for a long time, I had no clue. I was totally disconnected to myself, disconnected to my sensitivity. We've shared on this podcast before about, things we used to do, the life that we lived before we did this. And, the life I lived definitely wasn't what the life I live now. And, I don't have any regrets. I mean, maybe I do have a few, to be honest, right?
Mhm.
But those situations gave me a lesson to learn. And, I'm grateful for those lessons now because now I'm in a position where I can sit and I can relate to other people who are going through that or have been through that. And it gives me a greater healing for myself. Because at the end of the day, it all kind of comes back to me. How do I process this information, my information, external information? How do I process all this stuff, and how do I deal with it? And then how do I navigate? And then how do I take the first step to move forward as a powerful individual?
Yeah, and just kind of from that, it made me think it's like as spirituality now is a multi-billion-dollar industry in reality. Um, Having done a workshop or got a certification is not is the beginning of the work. It's like a good practitioner is someone that embodies the thing that they've learned and over time. So anyone can teach a tool like breath work, but knowing it is a different thing. It's experience and time and cultivation of self that makes you good at what you do. So um, and as you deepen, you become more sensitive too. I want to acknowledge that it's inevitable that the more things you strip away, the more sensitive you become. But again, that doesn't mean go live in a cave on the mountain and deny reality, because I don't think that's true integration. That's kind of like the saying that says the true monk is the one that comes back into the world after enlightenment and still is of service. And so to me, as much as I'm sensitive and sort of navigate the way I do, limiting my city time because I just know my downtime is going to be equal to or more than it. So it's picking my battles. It's picking what's going to serve me and what's going to serve others that I can be present for and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's about sort of becoming the the observer as opposed to the absorber. You know, rather than absorbing all the stuff around you, you just become the witness of. And it's going to happen, so don't beat yourself up. And it's always about not being harsh on oh, I fucked it up, or I didn't do the thing, or blah blah blah. We're not trying to belittle or berate ourselves for not doing it right, but yeah, starting to just acknowledge what's good for you in any moment and starting to move in that direction.
Yeah, man. 100% well said. I feel like we've kind of talked a lot about that one.
Yeah, I
The
was going to say
information.
that feels almost like a good place to wrap up about what this week's lesson on being human is and looks like.
Yeah.
And yeah, safe travels to all there navigating the world as it is. And yeah, start to just put those little things in place that make you sane and safe and functional on a daily basis, and not get so overwhelmed and get to the critical point of I now need time out because I didn't take time out on the journey. So
And for all our wonderful listeners out there, you know, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to Ben or myself. If you need any support with anything, feel free to reach out. You know, we're here to offer our services as well and offer support and create good structure to being, you know, creative warriors living as human beings in our power. So, you know, don't hesitate or think you're on your own, because a lot of the time we've all gone through the same kind of stuff. And, you know, support is, it's sometimes it's hard for us to reach out and ask for support because we think we've got to do it on our own. Or we kind of think, I'll get to this point and then when I need help, I'll ask for it. And we never end up asking for help. So if you need support, reach out. You know, having good friends and family network is always important, imperative to having a good structure and healthy lifestyle. So, you know, Ben and I are here to listen and to offer, you know, our service to you guys. So feel free, reach out if you need to.
yeah, because ultimately we don't know what we don't know. You know, so sometimes just having that sounding board is a huge part, and or just being able to vocalize where you're at, because I think we talked about this last week, where once you start to articulate those things to other people, you start to get your own insights. It's not always about someone else needing to be there because they've got all the answers, but just actually being a clear reflection back to you of what is. So yeah, we all need it to some degree, you know, so there's no shame in asking for support or things like that. So yeah, we all have our periods of needing more of that now. So
Yep.
all right, Matt,
No,
that
no
sounds good.
shame.
Yeah,
Put your hands up.
absolutely. All right, thanks guys, and comments below and reach out if you need to, and we'll see you again next week.